Okay, House of the Dragon, episode 5, the Princess and the Queen, or the Queen and the Princess. For some reason, I don't remember how they titled it. I think it was the Queen and the Princess. But welcome back to the Friends We Made podcast. I'm Court. This is Tim. We're back again to talk about the latest episode of House of the Dragon. So this is the biggest time jump we've seen. 10 years into the future, all new cast of characters as far as Alicent and Rhaenyra are concerned, as well as their children. And Laenor, they've changed. Thought it was interesting they changed the actor who plays Laenor, but not Christian Cole, because
Yeah.
seems like, I don't know, but it starts off, very intense. We get a birth giving scene. It's like, man, this show loves showing us how horrible giving birth was before there was any kind of painkillers. I imagine giving birth is probably still pretty horrible now. I don't have any kids, so I haven't had to go through that. But what did you think at the beginning?
I mean, it was brutal. I mean, seemed realistic, and just hard to watch.
Very, very. I love when Lanar comes in and he asks her if it was painful. Like that's like the exact wrong question. Like, bro, she's literally still bleeding right now. What are you talking about? And then he tells her about the time he took a lance to the shoulder, and she's just like, "I'm very sorry to hear that."
Yeah.
Like I don't know. So, what did you think about Lanar and that whole dynamic?
I mean, you mean just like that part there, or like the whole beginning? Because then it goes right into his kids not being his, and he knows about it. And
Yeah, I would say like just over the course of the episode, the scenes we see between him and her and their dynamic. Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, for some reason, I guess I misunderstood the whole friends with benefits. I was led to believe that by doing their duties, that they would have kids together, and that like whatever they did on the side would be like, for their
Right.
pleasure, but like, and more consistent probably. But either way, like I was, so the whole dynamic with the new knight, and not new knight, but with the father knight, and I don't know. I just, for me, it was all very awkward because it was very obvious and it was not expected, and I feel like they didn't need to go there. I was very surprised. That's kind of like the highlight of the episode for me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's very silly of them not to have their own kids. If they just had 3 kids that looked like they were his children, they could, prevent a lot of these issues. I think this is a difference with the source material when you cast a black actor in the role of Corlys Valerian. In the source material, obviously, he's not coded as being black, so it's not as obvious that those are not his kids. So when they cast Corlys Valerian, it's one of those things was like that actually could add to the story here because now it's just completely unavoidable. Like it's like Viserys is willfully not seeing this. It's like those are clearly not his children, and the part about their dynamic that I didn't understand is you almost get the idea from watching this that up until this point, Rhaenyra and Laenor are just thinking to themselves, "Yeah, we're totally killing this, totally done." And it's like, everybody knows what's going on, whether or not Viserys is saying anything about it at all. And you guys know everything. Everyone knows what's going on, and you're not even really trying to hide it.
No, like he's like there immediately. Like I don't know. Like I said, that whole I don't know. Just with the other jumps where we had like a jump of 2 years or jump of 3 years, and the concern was like, oh, they're having all these conversations now. It's like we went through 10 years of like people holding their tongues to have one day, one episode where everybody just all comes to fruition. It seemed a little extra.
Right. And I would say I think it's clear that there have been whispers about this before, and Rhaenyra makes it clear when she talks to Viserys that she's brought it up to him before, probably when the other 2 kids were born. So there has been like some talk of this before, but it seems like for some reason it only comes to a head with this third child. Like if he would have been born with white hair, would all of this have been like? Well, I guess it's just a one of those things, we don't know. I mean, we can wonder about it, but this was certainly there. so why would the other two not be? It was a little weird.
Yeah.
But in addition to the new actresses who are playing Rhaenyra and Allison, we see the new actress and actresses who are playing their kids. And I kind of feel like the ages were a little bit off here. Like, if we've gone 10 years in the future, shouldn't Aegon be like 12? I feel like he looks like he's closer to like 15.
Yeah.
And his older sister definitely looks like she's a little older than like 11 or so. And then I feel like Rhaenyra's kids, Luke and Jace, they seem like they're about the right age. But I don't know. It just seems like the ages are a little bit not in line with the amount of time that has supposed to have gone by. But that's not anything that really bothers me. Really, it's just something I noticed.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that did bother me, like I stated in the last week's episode, I knew with the time jump we were not going to get any kind of answer or anything about what happened at the wedding or like why he did that or anything like that. It was just going to be glossed over. Yeah, now he's just still in the King's Guard. Like nothing happened. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I mean that was again pretty unsatisfying just to see that and to see him being the same actor with like a little bit of some gray streaks in the beard, following the queen now around instead of the princess. It was just an awkward. I don't know, and like the way he talked and the things he said, he's very much just like a little lapdog now. Like he fell right into a little role there.
Right, and this is like where the story picks up. I mean, the name of this episode is the name of the novella that this is the story was originally based off of before he wrote Fire and Blood. So, like we're kind of into the story. This is like the dynamic of Allison and Rhaenyra that was like originally given to us in the source material. We don't see them as kids. I don't think they're as close in age as the show makes it seem like. I don't think they were ever friends growing up. I feel like they probably did not have a relationship until Allison married Viserys. And it was not the way it was depicted in the show. But it's fun. We get the scene of the kids with the dragons. So we have I don't know if that was Jace or Luke. I think it was Luke trying to like bond with his dragon. And that was interesting because in Game of Thrones, it's just like Daenerys has these dragons hatch, and like all three of them are just bond to her. Like there's no, are they going to accept her or are they not going to accept her? Which, I mean, if they wouldn't have, that would have just sucked for the rest of the world. Just three untamed dragons running around wreaking havoc on everything. But here is like, I guess they get these dragons eggs as when they're babies to sleep in their cribs with them, and some of the eggs hatch, and then some of the eggs don't hatch. And I guess once they hatch, then they can either accept you or not accept you. So I mean, that was kind of interesting. We're getting a little bit more of that backstory.
Yeah, no, I like that. I definitely thought it was basically just magic why they had dragons no one else did after Daenerys' whole like getting burnt in the fire with them, and that was very dramatic in the previous season or the previous series. So I thought it was just like a magical thing is how they held the dragons. So this was kind of put a little bit of a not only like, I mean, it kind of brings a question, why are they the only ones with dragons? Like,
well, only Targaryens can ride dragons, but not all Targaryens can ride dragons.
So no one else could ever train a dragon?
I think other Valyrians could, but there are no more Valyrians except for the Targaryens and the Valyrians. And the Valyrians are not dragon riders, but the Valyrian kids are because their moms are Targaryens. So they have Targaryen blood on their mom's side. So that's why like Laenor is a dragon rider because he's half Targaryen. And his sister's also a dragon rider, and her kids are too, because of their Targaryen blood. And I've heard that's like maybe part of the reason why they marry brother or sister, because if only people who have your blood can ride dragons, you don't want to be mixing it with everyone else in the realm. So that you want to make sure you're the only ones who have the nuclear weapons.
Yeah. So
then we get the scene of Alicent and Viserys, who is just looking absolutely horrible.
Yeah, falling apart.
Part of his arm is missing now. Yeah. And I saw like a meme. It was like Viserys on the next episode of House of the Dragons, and it was like a picture of Sméagol from Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's not too far off at this point.
No.
And he's just so much weaker now than he was even years ago. You know, Allison's bringing up this whole issue between Rhaenyra and like her illegitimate kids. And it's like, well, one, those are his grandkids. He is shown to be a person who loves his family. Like, what did you expect that he's going to do? Like, she should know he's not going to do anything about this.
Yeah.
Like, is he going to sentence his daughter and his grandkids to be like exiled or murdered, you know, executed or anything like that? Like, it's not going to happen. The problem is she's obviously pressing the issue, and he just seems content to just let that be.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't like dealing with problems. Same reason he let his brother get away with so much. He'd rather just like, you know, ignore it basically.
Right, but what's he think is going to happen once he dies?
I mean, I really just don't think he can handle it. That's why he's like falling apart. Like he can't handle the stress as it is. Like he cannot confront these types of large decisions.
Right. And I thought about back in Game of Thrones, there's an early chapter, I think is a Catelyn chapter, where she talks about when he first bought home Jon Snow, and there was like a rumor about the woman who might have been his mother. And she confronted Ned with it, and like it was the only time she ever saw him angry, she said, and like he scared her. And they had a conversation, and at the end of it, he was like, now I want to know the name of the person who told you that name. And like after that, no one ever said that name again. It's like Ned was not an evil person or a spiteful or vengeful person, and we don't know what he actually did to that person. But he let it be known that like I don't want to hear about this again from anyone. And I feel like the series needs to attack this like that. Like you don't just tell Alicent, okay, don't talk about this anymore. It's like it needs to be made clear, like you are endangering the life of my daughter and my grandchildren. When you talk about this, it's either going to be you or it's going to be them, and it's not going to be them. So, you know, it is what it is. And he's just not willing to do that by any means at all.
No.
It's a problem.
She took over, she wrestled the control over in that relationship. Just everything that they were doing and saying. I mean, he's still the king, but.
And I feel like he probably doesn't even know it, doesn't even realize it. Like, didn't even realize it until it was like all over that, like, now she's basically just running him. Like, she's on the small council.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And so I don't remember if the scene in the yard comes first or if the scene where Prince Aegon's just like yanking it out his window comes first. But that was very weird.
Yeah, no, then that was kind of just glossed right over. That was it.
I'm pretty sure that's the same window that Thomas stepped out of.
I was thinking the same thing.
But yeah, I mean, that was weird. It's like you get this like sense of Aemon. Like Aemon doesn't really care about being king. It seems like his mom's like, yeah, if you challenge her claim, she'll kill you. It's like, well, then I won't challenge her.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna go back to the window.
Right, like what are we talking about again? It's like, Jason's gonna be king. Like I don't really need that in my life. And I feel like she's planting these seeds that like, no, you these are not your family members. These are your enemies. And I think that scene happened before the scene in the yard when they're training. And it's just so ridiculous that once again, the series like, oh, look at them out here. They're bonds that are going to last forever, just like brothers. And the hand's like, yeah, I guess. Like,
yeah.
If you say so. Like, he sees exactly what's going on down in the yard.
Yeah, the scene was right before or right after. But yeah, I thought that's why when they broke out the fight, I was worried he was going to actually hit him, try to hit him. And I mean, he was way bigger and way stronger. I mean, I don't know what the age difference is, but.
And when you're that young, the age difference means a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like being 3 years older, like between 15 and 12.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
And then we get to see more of Sir Christian Cole. He's going on what I call that reverse Jamie.
Yeah.
Like he goes from the knight in shining armor, and then it's like, oh, that's not who that guy is at all. He's actually pretty fucking horrible. And it's like, I feel like last week he looked horrible in everything that he did with confessing his love to Rhaenyra and expecting that she's going to give up being the queen to run off with him and being super angry at her when she didn't, and obviously still being bitter about that 10 years later. It just all looks so weak. But then it's in the yard, now you're being cruel to children. And it's just like that. It's like, okay, I just hate you now. Like I got no time for that. Like I don't care what you don't like about these kids' moms or the fact that you think they're bastards or anything like that. Like there's no reason for you to be being like cruel to these kids. But he's doing it just to get a rise out of Strong, their father, because he knows he wants to like have that whole thing blow up in the yard. I don't know why that was the catalyst. Like why? Okay, now that he hit him, now everybody's gonna know the truth. Like everybody already knew the truth.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand like
Again,
why
that whole I don't know. That's why I said that took the that was kind of the main thing for me. That whole dynamic was then he's out in the yard. I was like, has this not happened in the last 10 years? He's like out here giving his sons pointers, like acting like he's not, and like I don't know. Just and then they fight, and it just seemed like so much.
I didn't know. Oh, sorry, I got distracted there. I didn't like the fact that we don't get any build up as to like how him and his relationship with Rhaenyra like starts, or like where does that come from? We do see him a couple of times before. I think in episode 2 where she kills the boar, when she like comes back in the camp, like we just get like a reaction shot of him looking at her. But like everyone was looking at her. Yeah. I mean, he was one of the guys that was there. But there are a lot of guys out
there. If he was supposed to like one of the ones who like changed.
No, he's the same actor. He's the same actor. And then when she goes out in the streets with Daemon and like she bumps into him because he's like the Lord Commander of the City Watch, and like he recognizes her and he like has a word with her. And then last week in the wedding episode, when everything's happening, he picks her up and throws her over his shoulder and kind of gets her out of there. And now it's just like, now they got 3 children and they're in love. It's like, well, I feel like you guys could like shown a little bit more of that and a little bit more of how that happened. And I get, you're trying to put a lot into the backstory so you can like actually get to the main crux of the story. But I feel like this is a big part of the main crux of the story. Like, what is the relationship? Does she really love him? Or was he just like a rebound after the whole Christian Cole thing, and he's just a guy who's around, and now they have 3 kids together? It seems like there's a lot more love between them than that, but they could have done a better job with that, I think.
Well, not only that, but with the kid's age, I didn't even think about it, but like it must have started pretty much immediately.
Right. It would have had to start like basically immediately. So like they could have shown a little bit more going back to that. And then I think we got another scene with Laenor where he comes in drunk and he's talking about how he wants to go to battle in the Stepstones. And Rhaenyra's just like, yo, what are you talking about? Like, do you not realize what's going on around here? And I feel like she kind of has a point, but also, Rhaenyra, did you not realize what was going around here until like 3 hours ago?
Yeah, no. I guess.
I mean, I guess that's going to happen when you jump forward in time. If you have a 10-year time jump, you're just not going to be able to do it in a real organic way. And they're just trying to show us that, Laenor feels like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do. I came here, I married you, and I'm doing my part. And she's just like, your part is just to be a rich dude. Like, what have you given up? You have everything that you want. Like, now I'm asking you to make a sacrifice.
Yeah, no, he was not as I thought he'd be more behind, like, with her than he ended up being. But he's definitely on his own team. So,
but I do think he has loyalty to her.
Yeah, no, he likes her. I mean, he just, I don't know. I don't think he'd like do anything terrible, but he's definitely not there for her at all.
I mean, and they are cousins. They did grow up together, so I feel like they do have like a connection. That makes it very weird that they're married, but everything about it's weird, so it doesn't really matter. I guess we can just talk about this storyline before we talk about Daemon's storyline at all. We get Lionel Strong wanting to resign as being hand to the king because of what's going on with his son and the queen. And I really do like how he was just not going to say it out loud.
Like he'd kept his job instead of saying it.
Yeah, Alice was there the whole time. Go ahead, tell him. And he was like, yep, I'm not going to say it. I won't resign now, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'll keep my job. I'm not saying that.
All right.
Yeah, that was interesting. He's a smart guy.
I would have said it with a smirk on his face. He would have been real sad about saying it, but he would have loved to tell him,
Yeah.
And so that was interesting that, he's going to go back to Harrenhal, take his son there, and then his brother is, I guess, now the villain of the show.
Yeah.
We need a villain. I don't understand how any of that works. I guess apparently he's a Grand Inquisitor, so he's one of the people in charge, or maybe not the Grand Inquisitor, but he's like one of the Inquisitors, so he's in charge of getting confessions out of people, which is just code for torturing people.
Yeah.
And so he has these guys who are sentenced to death agree to murder his brother and his father by setting a fire at Harrenhal. But in order to do it, they have to have their tongues cut out, I guess, so they can't tell anyone about it. But I mean, like, how do these people know how to get to Harrenhal? How they get in there and set this fire? Like, I don't know. None of it really seemed to come together as like a real plan that could work to me.
No.
And that was kind of
you spoke of him being like an expert in his craft, but you haven't seen a lot of this kind of stuff happening. Like, you don't become an expert in your craft by being the first one to did it, because it hasn't been happening in years. We already talked about that. This conflict hasn't been, like, heroes haven't arisen because there haven't been the need. So, I mean, for him to have acquired these skills, and I don't know, it did seem a little easy. I will say Harrenhal's that curse, though, isn't it? That was where, Roose Bolton or whatever, or Ramsay.
That's what Roose Bolton was at in the books with Arya. In the show, it was Tywin Lannister. The Boltons live at the Dreadfort, though.
Yeah.
That's where Ramsay was at.
I just remember one scene, like, they were talking about how it was haunted and how it burnt down. Yeah. I feel like I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. So the story with Harrenhal is that I think it was one of the Iron Islanders, Harren the Black. He conquered the Riverlands and he had it built, and it took like 40 years because of how big it was. And a ton of people died building it. And he was so cruel. That's why they called him Harren the Black. He like worked all these people to death for 40 years to build him this ridiculously huge castle. And the day that they finished building it was the day Aegon landed on Westeros to conquer the Seven Kingdoms. So that shit was completely cursed from the beginning. And when Aegon went to Harrenhal and told him to yield, he was like, yeah, whatever. I got this huge castle. There's no way you could possibly storm it. And instead, Aegon just had Valerion burn the towers and cook all of them inside the hall. So they all like basically roasted to death. So that's why Harrenhal was all burnt, because it was burnt by dragonfire. And literally every family that has been the lords of Harrenhal, not only does like the Lord die, but the entire line like dies. So that's why there's no strong in the Game of Thrones, and there's multiple families that get it between now and Game of Thrones, and they all die. And then in Game of Thrones, it changes hands a bunch of times. I think it ends up being Littlefingers, and then we see what happens to Littlefinger. So like if you want a Lord of Harrenhal, you're going to die with no heirs. That's just the way it goes. So I didn't really hate the fact that happened. It's like, well, that's in line with it. Was that?
There's a lot of history down that road.
Yeah. So I didn't hate the fact that happened, because that's how Harrenhal is. Like, they died in a fire. It was mysterious. A lot of mysterious deaths there. But just the fact that, like, how did Larys Strong pull that off? And what is his motivation? I get that he's the Lord of Harrenhal. Now, maybe that's just his sole motivation. But, just go from being this kind of guy who has some secrets to like, yeah, I murdered my father and my brother because I think the queen's going to give me a reward for it. That's a huge jump.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't do that. I mean, especially you don't do that on an insinuation unless you wanted to do it before you were, I mean, he did it for his own good, and now he's tied to her as well.
They don't show any animosity between him and his family before that. Like he's crippled. They call him, Clubfoot. Give us a scene where he's like complaining that he doesn't like being called Clubfoot. Give us a scene where he's complaining about how his brother gets to be a knight and he doesn't get to be a knight. Show us like some animosity. Show us like what could potentially be a motivation for this. I mean, I think back to Game of Thrones, and I remember when I read that for the first time, when they revealed that Joffrey was not the son of Robert Baratheon. He was actually Cersei and Jaime's son. I was completely shocked, But I was like, oh yeah, completely makes sense. He laid it all out for you. Like if you were trying to figure out this mystery, you could have easily come to the conclusion of where it was going. I just read it, not really trying to figure out the mystery, just enjoying it and seeing and taking it as it came. So when they said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's really good because all the signs are there. He's certainly like laid it out for us. And I feel like the show has a problem where they just don't do that. It's just like, oh, this guy was evil the whole time. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. Why not? Guess we know that going forward now.
They didn't flesh that out at all. I mean, other than the fact that he's like a little creepy. But yeah, the fact that, I don't know, to do that to your dad. I mean, his dad was like pretty reasonable. I mean, that's how he became the Hand, and he's one of the more reasonable characters on the show. So I don't really see that he's a terrible father.
It seems like maybe that is keeping with Game of Thrones in that he's honorable, and this is a world that doesn't seem to ever reward being honorable. It almost seems like it punishes it. But it's not like he died because of his honor. I mean, maybe you can say he did because he insisted on like seeing his son back to Harrenhal, but he didn't do anything to bring that on himself. You would think it was just very interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess the other main storyline we have is Daemon. So Daemon is now, is he in Braavos?
Yeah, I think so.
Or Pentos?
Pentos, maybe. I know he's across the ocean.
I think he's in Pentos.
Yeah,
the Narrow Sea. And he's basically married now to, was it Lena Valerian? Yeah. They got a couple kids.
The one who was like 10.
Was that?
The actress who was like 10 in like the last.
Yeah, in episode 2. They were going to marry her off to Viserys, and it was weird. But like now it's 10 years later, so she's like 23 and she has 2 kids that are kind of old, so it's not as weird. Like she had to start having kids when she was like 15 or 16 to have kids at this age. And I was kind of upset that we didn't get more on like what is the nature of their relationship.
Like we didn't have any hints like beforehand, did we?
They talked at the wedding.
Did they?
They talked at the wedding. I feel like she approached him. And, it seemed like she was kind of like the plotting one where she understood, well, hey, your wife just died. Maybe me and you should get married. That would, be a good match for the both of us. And, seems like that worked out. They had kids. But I couldn't tell if he loves her. I think he definitely cares about her. It's very weird. Like, I didn't understand that relationship. I feel like they could have fleshed that out a little bit more. And this prince is trying to get him to basically be a mercenary. There's issues with the Stepstones again. So they're like, hey, 10 years ago, you brought your dragons down here and dealt with the crab feeders. We could use that again. And we got plenty of gold, so we can make it worth your while. And his wife is basically told him, like, he's more than that. And I'm like, why? Why is he more than that? He was the prince. Now he's not. He has all these other heirs that are ahead of him. He goes back to Westeros, and he's right. He's just going to be playing these stupid political games at court.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a pretty sweet deal. Like, go fly your dragon around and scare off and burn down some boats. Seems like a pretty easy gig, and he said he was going to get him rewarded with like lands, and I don't know. Seems like the easy choice there.
Right. And so then we get another childbirth scene, and I mean, it's brutal again. I do think it was interesting that we see, I don't know if you would call him a maester in Pentos, but whoever's in charge of, delivering the baby goes to Daemon basically with the same option that was given to Viserys in episode 1, as far as there's some complications happening. Do you want to try to save the baby? If you do, she's going to die. But we don't get to see what his decision is. She just makes the decision, I'm not going to die like this. I mean, she said earlier in the episode, I want to die a dragon rider's death. But the one thing I didn't understand is earlier in the episode when they're flying, the dragon blows out fire and Daemon just rides straight through it. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I guess he's a Targaryen. I guess they're establishing that just Targaryens are not burned by fire. But then she goes out on the beach and she dies by having her dragon breathe fire on her. And I was like, so I guess they haven't established that. Like, I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I remember Daenerys was able to. That's why I said magic, because I mean, she was able to, like, she was sitting in the flames, and she was fine. That wasn't even dragon flames. That was just regular fire. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't really catch that when he was on the dragon or earlier in the episode, but that was definitely dramatic. Yeah, I didn't think about the fact that you don't get to hear his answer either. Like,
right. I feel like they always do that with Damon. Like, we didn't get to actually see the toast that he supposedly did. And then there was something.
You said the same thing last week because something that happened. You were like,
yeah, we don't see him actually kill his wife.
Yeah.
And we don't see him actually make the decision. So we don't know what he really would have done in that situation. It kind of seemed like he wouldn't have done it. And I thought that would have been an interesting, like, juxtaposition. Like, he doesn't have any male sons. And, he, like to say that he wouldn't do it with Viserys there because he's a stronger person. And I'm just curious, like, what's his relationship with his kids? Like, his daughter says at one point that he ignores her.
Yeah.
Like, is he just like one of those guys who's just not interested in their own children? Or like, I'm really interested. I really wish we could have got to see more of the relationship between him and his wife and his daughters. But maybe we'll get more going forward. The daughters are still around. I think they're dragon riders. Civil War is coming, so every dragon rider is going to be important.
Yeah, I mean, it's just feel like we're still missing, like you said, those relationships and those like stories. We're just hopefully now that we've stopped jumping ahead, we'll start getting more of that. But this episode seemed a little bit too much, too fast, for a 10-year jump.
Well, I think there will be some more time jumps. I just don't think there will be anything as extreme as what we saw. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, the next episode picks up like 6 months in the future, and then eventually, we're going from like 6 months in the future to like a year and a half in the future, and then we just kind of stay there at that point. The writers say that this is basically like a second pilot. Like they had the first pilot episode, like episode 1, and they're like, this is like another pilot episode.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like the plot doesn't really get advanced that much in this episode. It's more just about the hard reset of just like, this is where everyone is. This is what's going on. Rhaenyra's leaving court. She's going to go to Dragonstone, which I just think is a bad idea. I feel like your influence lessens when you're not physically there. But also, if you're not physically there and people aren't looking at your kids every day, maybe they're not talking as much about the fact that they're obviously not Laenor's kids. Like if they're not in everyone's sight all the time.
Yeah.
But we got 3 episodes left, so I'm interested in seeing like where they end the first season. I felt they got to kill Viserys off in season 1.
Yeah, no. Maybe like the beginning or the very end of the second to last episode.
That's what they like, but I'm wondering if they'll do it next week just to throw people off.
I feel like they've been doing that. They've been kind of doing things with different timing, which they need to do something unique because everything else they're doing has kind of been less original.
If Viserys dies in episode like 8, is that where Ned died, or he died in 9?
I think it was at the end of 9. I can't remember. There was quite a bit that happened after that in the book, but
yeah, I think it is at the end of 9. I think like 9 is usually the climax, and 10 is like, all right, let's get the table set for the next season. So it would make the most sense that they would hold off on killing Viserys until at least episode 8 or 9. Like, we won't see him die next week, but that could be a good reason to do it. I mean, they could also say he's not going to die until season 2 just to like screw with everyone, because they're really telegraphing that he's going to die. I mean, he's literally falling apart.
Yeah, no.
He looks horrible. I mean, he's the king when it starts. So, I mean, if it's Game of Thrones and someone's king at the beginning, you can pretty much put a bet on the fact that they're not going to make it. Otherwise, what's the show going to be about?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious, interested to see next week. Like I said, still like the show. Like I had some complaints. There's certain things about it that I look at and it's like, okay, that didn't make sense. I don't like that creative decision or anything. But at the end of the day, it's not like I'm on like season 7, 8 of it where I'm just every episode I'm just like, well, that was dumb. I hated all of it.
Yeah, no, it's still entertaining, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But definitely far from falling in love with it just yet.
Right. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up for us today. So we will be back next week to talk about more of this. Got episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Andor. Going to be posted soon, and then episode 4 comes out tomorrow. So we got a lot more to talk about. Thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, and subscribe. Have a good night.